Welcome to the Future of Supply Chain, presented by Dynamo. Each episode, we sit down with leaders in the industry as we build the future of supply chain together. Let's get into the show. Here's our host, Santosh Sankar.
Hey, ladies and gents, welcome back to the Future of Supply Chain podcast. I'm your host, Santosh Sankar, and joining me today is Stephen Dombroski, Director of CPG and Food and Beverage at QAD. Welcome, Stephen. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, Santosh. Great to be here. Thank you very much.
So, we are going to cover a lot of ground in our conversation today, but I'd love to kind of level set some of the knowledge, perhaps amongst our audience and listener base, as to what QAD is and what you and the team do day in and day out serving your customers.
That's a great question. I appreciate that because, for as long as QAD has been in business, everybody's still learning, who we are and what we do. QAD has been in business over 45 years. We focus on ERP. That's where we started with. It's still our core, focusing on manufacturing companies only. And we have some deep industries that we focus on: automotive, food and beverage, industrial, and life sciences are the primary industries. And over the last 10 years or so, we've ventured to move into the ecosystem that our customers have. So in addition to core manufacturing and ERP, we've moved into supply chain planning, quality management, global trade and transportation, and then advanced scheduling, and more recently, in the last couple of years, the connected workforce. And what we've been able to do over those 45 years is we're not just about software. We have some really long-term customers because we partner with them. We believe in kind of three things: people, processes, and systems. You can't just run with a system. You need a process behind it, and then you have to educate the people, and you need partnerships behind it. And that's been our success leading up till now. And it's being able to support the plant floor, improve some of the metrics on the plant floor, such as OEE. But just to complete, our goal is to have a complete feedback loop from start to finish. So from top floor to shop floor, as they say, we're trying to connect. And over the next couple of months, people are going to be seeing some of the things that we're doing. We're moving to the next phase of QAD Live. We have some events coming up this fall. We have a number of announcements coming off. That's about all I can say right now. But if you keep to date with the QAD website, you'll see we're going to start making some noise. We're going to start doing some cool things out there.
Amazing. And what's Stephen's story? How did you kind of get into this wonderful world of manufacturing technology, manufacturing software, CPG food bev?
So in asking me the Stephen story, you must be having a hard time sleeping at night. So you might want to listen to this later. Maybe you're having some insomnia. Well, actually, my story is actually kind of interesting. I ended up where I am today the old-fashioned way, which is kind of pure dumb luck. It was early 80s. I got out of college. I was like everybody, struggling to find that first job where somebody says, hey, you need experience. And I connected with an executive recruiter who found himself unemployed. He was a senior exec at various food companies in sales, but he got priced and boxed out of the market. So he turned into an executive recruiter. And one day he called me. I was living in Connecticut at the time. And he called me up. He goes, hey, I got an interview for you tomorrow. It's at a medical company. They make the scopes for colonoscopies, bladder surgeries, knee surgeries. So go and try to get the job. I said, well, what's the job? He goes, well, I'm looking at the paper here, and it says planning, production planner, production scheduler. I don't know, one of the two. I said, well, which one? And he got kind of snarky if you push back on him. And he goes, I don't know what it is. I said, well, what do you do? He said, you tell the plant what to make. I said, oh, very cool. That's neat. I said, well, who tells me? He goes, I don't freaking know. He goes, just go get the job. He goes, because my kid's tuition's due in 2 weeks. He goes, I got to pay the schools. So just go and get the job. Well, I did. I got the job, and within the first hour of working there, Santosh, I found out what planning was, and I found out what production scheduling were, and I found out they're two very different things. And over the next 4 to 5 years, that kind of built my education in planning, scheduling, and all facets of manufacturing. And one day I was sitting around watching a football game, and I was surfing the 80s version of the internet, which was the New York Times. And I found this job with a company that did finite scheduling software. It's one of the first companies to do it. They said they need experts in scheduling. And I remember this headhunter, the executive recruiter, Henry, He said, when you write letters for jobs, try to stand out. So in this letter, I said, production scheduling is more of a hobby for me than a job. Well, the person who was going through the resumes brought me in for an interview, and it clicked. And that's kind of where I am today. That's how I got into my first production scheduling software company. And it was funny. My wife and I were over at his house a couple of years later for dinner with he and his wife. And he said, hey, I never had any intention on hiring you. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I got that letter. I got the resume. And the only reason I brought you in is I told Howie is that I have to interview the lunatic who actually would admit to having production scheduling as a hobby. But it's through that first job in that manufacturing company that kind of built the foundation for me. And ironically, 2 weeks ago, a colleague of mine and I recorded a video on the differences between planning and scheduling. And this is no lie, it was the 41st anniversary of me starting as that production planning job. And I got to meet my wife in that first job too. So that's pretty cool. But
Not too bad. Not too bad. So you've written quite extensively about how many stakeholders in the industry, when we kind of look at manufacturing broadly, have kind of adopted too reactive of a posture. And so I would love to kind of dig into how you and the team at QAD are implementing solutions where they can think about planning and there's a kind of advanced planning solutions in order to no longer be reactive, but proactive, perhaps. And proactive is in my own words.
no, that's another really good question. And when you get to be, I kind of tipped off a couple things in the last question in terms of I mentioned early 80s. So when you get to be in my stage of the game, you get kind of snarky yourself and you just you speak your mind. And yeah, I think there's a lot of manufacturing companies out there and big ones that still they get in their own way. They're chasing yesterday's problems with outdated tools. They're constantly reacting instead of preparing. And there's a word out there that everybody uses that to me is overused now. It was great for a couple of years. It's called disruption. In the business I focus on, a customer order changing customer order, a material not coming in on time. That's a day in the life of the food business, man. That's not a disruption. The disruption is a pandemic, a tornado, some idiot driving a boat into a bridge. That's a disruption. And what we do, QAD flips the script. We connect demand, capacity, scheduling, and the shop floor all together. Because what we're doing is we're trying to take people on what we call a production excellence journey. We're trying to get the manufacturing execution platform running everything in sync. Because, years ago, the S&OP came out, and S&OP was used to break down silos, but it was within just that organization. Now what you have to do is you have to expand through the whole ecosystem. So it's not just about software. It's about aligning the people, the processes, and the systems to be able to be ready for that next problem. And, another interesting word out there, Santosh, is future. Well, what's the definition of future? Technically, if you think about it, the future can be tomorrow. It was in 2019, 2020 when the pandemic hit. All of a sudden, kids were in school, then they weren't. People could go to restaurants, then they couldn't. That's the future, and companies had to prepare and brace for it, and they weren't ready.
And so one can think about planning, and I'm going to kind of shift us a little bit, perhaps even one step before, because when somebody says planning in the context of supply chain, there's then a natural question I have is, so what are we planning for? How many of these things could possibly be desired and wanted? So those are statements of demand. And demand forecasting is also a suite of tools that QAD offers and can help customers work with and leverage. Are there kind of ways you found some of your best partners or customers thinking about demand forecasting, especially in the year we're sitting in, right? Where a statement could be made today and that statement's totally invalidated tomorrow, so on and so forth. So there's that inherent volatility that we also need to operate within. Well, what have you
Yeah.
found to work?
Well, so here's the thing. So years ago, and again, here's the old supply chain guy coming out. Years ago, everybody relied the primary forecasting tool was based on historical forecast.
Yeah.
Well, if you rely on historical forecast today, you know, tell me how much the building's going to be for rent next week because it's probably going to be open because you're going to kill yourself. Historical forecast, went away with COVID and the pandemic. We still haven't technically stabilized, and I don't think we ever will because of these disruptions, the word I said I don't like, and they're so frequent and these issues are so frequent. I don't think you're ever going to be able to stabilize to a level of forecast. And it's not just because of those too. It's also because just with the advancement in technologies, consumer preferences are changing. People want, years ago, people said, hey, you had the same cell phone case. I wanted a red case. You got a blue case. Now, I mean, think about it. You have these type of beverage. They sell these beverage containers like this that I'm using that you can actually mix your own flavored drinks. And the customization now it has gone all the way down to foods. So the food industry, for example, is just, you can't forecast based on history. And so now what you have to do, you need different information. And the better information you get, the quicker you get it, the better you're going to be able to do. And that's where AI comes in. Because that's where, and advanced planning tools and things like demand sensing. But AI can come in and help predict some of those consumer demand changes. I joke with people, I get mad when I place an order with Amazon and it's not going to be delivered tomorrow. People get mad. People want things delivered before you even know you want them. The doorbell's ringing. Who is that? Oh, that's the guy delivering the product that I don't really know I want, but I do. That's how fast business has to react today. So the more information you can get and the more tools that help you be able to get that data, sift through it, especially demand planning data, the faster your organization can react in terms of buying the materials, planning out the different facilities. If you need co-packers, planning that production schedule, then of course, making sure the line's ready to go, because last thing you want to do is disrupt the line mid flow, because you want to, what we call, win the day, win the shift. You can't win the shift if you're constantly changing things. And one last thing on forecasting, I don't want to go too long on this, but one other thing on forecasting is people don't realize the importance. World-class sometimes is considered about 80% in CPG. So if you think about it, that's 80% forecast accuracy, which means you're wrong 20% of the time. Your production plan starts with the forecast. Your production plan is starting out 20% wrong. No matter how you slice it, that means you're buying 20% of the wrong materials. You're scheduling 20% of the wrong things. That's on a good day. So the better information you can get at that forecasting level, it flows downstream a lot smoother, and you can react better to some of these crazy things that are going on.
And so I'm going to kind of shift the conversation a bit, but the one area that QAD is also very deep in is what we would describe as the connected workforce, right? And connected workforce solutions. Part of kind of what we've discussed and hit on is there's a whole lot of jargon in our world these days. Connected workforce could feel a bit jargony. Well, what have you found that practically means in this day and age? And in practice, what does it enable?
So another great question, and that term connected workforce, yeah, it does. It sounds buzzwordy. It sounds almost cliche, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. And I'll tell you why it's not. Because it's all about structure, communication, and accountability. I mentioned a second ago about demand plan, production plan, and then your advanced schedule. That ties everything together. That helps you pick which facilities are going to make what. Do I need co-packers? What materials do I need? You can have all that in place. Your forecast accuracy can be in 100%. But if your shop floor has any sort of glitches, if it's not working smoothly, who cares? It doesn't really matter. And what's happened since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and since we've had manufacturing facilities, is those workers. And I come from a line of the blue collar workers. I had a grandfather that started at the Yale Lock Company in Connecticut over 100 years ago. They're time clock punchers. They're punchers, and they just, hey, come in, shut up, do the work, and leave. The knowledge those guys have on the shop floor is immeasurable. And one of the things Connected Worker does is it brings those people together. It links the processes, and it links, you're not just looking at your workstation. You are now looking at the entire factory floor because you're communicating with your worker. The software is just a piece of it. We have monitors throughout to help see how you're producing, but it's also given the workers a voice. It's allowing them to say, if they see something, say something. If they see something in a previous step, fix it. Don't wait for the engineer to do it, because you're the guys and people that are doing this every day, day in and day out. We start off with these things called huddles in the beginning of the shift, during the shift, impromptu huddles, and at the end of the shift, so that communication is always there. And what it's done, it's been able to provide the executive team, and that's where we get the term top floor to shop floor, key information on how the operation is running. And it's helped the workforce. It's given them a voice. It's more about a job now. It's about being productive with your day, because they feel like they're finally an integral part of the organization, which they always were, just people didn't know it. So it's some amazing stuff, because when people are informed, engaged, and empowered, a lot of stuff can happen. And it's not about replacing people. It's about empowering them and making them work together as a team. Because again, like I said, if that shop floor is not connected, you're not going to get any product out the door.
Yeah.
So
And
hopefully
so
that explains kind of where you were going.
it does. It does. I'm actually going to kind of further pull this thread, because you mentioned AI once or twice. It would be a shock if we don't talk about AI with a bit of focus here, given the day and age we're in. But AI is oftentimes seen as displacing workers. But it's interesting because you just mentioned about enabling, empowering the worker, right? Helping them go harder, faster, so to speak, in kind of much simpler parlance. Where have you seen AI really be kind of a support tool and a support mechanism for the frontline workforce? Where have you seen them be able to do more or do better as a result of AI enablement?
So it's, again, and maybe it's my perspective, like a joke I've said a couple times, the old dog. I joke with a friend of mine who has the what do they call them, a smart home, everything. I mean, the technology does absolutely everything for him. And I joke with him and I say, I want to be around one day when your power goes out. I want to see your kids just freak on themselves, because you got to know how to do things without it. AI is absolutely amazing. We're using it at QAD, and we're going to be using it at QAD. And it helps empower things. But what it does is it helps bring out that human intelligence. It takes some of the mundane stuff. It takes a lot of things that took a lot of time and really took away from people being able to be creative. And now it does it for you. It's a big misconception that AI is going to take away that worker. It's kind of like that first job I told you about. When I started finance scheduling, I showed these people the fancy Gantt charts of the advanced scheduling tool, and they're like, the schedules are like, you're not going to need me anymore. No, man, we're going to need you more, because now we're getting the grunt work done. It's the same thing with AI on the shop floor. Here's a quick story for you. There was some AI built features in that caught something that the sensors were able to catch, but it wasn't big enough to trigger the alarms. It was in a dairy plant, and there was a power surge that was just making the machines run slower. It wasn't big enough for the normal sensors to catch it, but AI did. And what they were able to do is somebody caught this, a worker caught this, stop the presses, let's get a quick huddle together. Hey, check this out. Sure enough, they looked at the software, they looked at the system, it proved the fact, they got maintenance in there, they fixed it. This could have slowed things down for weeks. They never would have figured it out through the normal course of events. But with the AI tools, it caught them. Now, here's the thing. who was there to be able to say the AI tools caught him, the worker? So it empowers you more. It helps. It acted in this case as a warning system to trigger the process to get fixed. And in this case, it was a machine. But again, human intelligence, it still leads the day, but artificial intelligence can just make people more productive.
And so, as you kind of look at some of the mainstays of the manufacturing industry when it comes to technology, ERP comes to mind. You then have certain approaches, protocol, philosophies, S&OP, lean, so on and so forth. What is the way these different vantage points, tools, techniques actually come together now as AI is starting to more clearly add value and be a nice aid, an enabler of the frontline workforce, rather than something that should be viewed as a threat or a substitute to the people that, make some of our most loved dairy products, or make, the locks on our door, our garage doors, so on and so forth. How does this all come together? Because there's not a world where AI is just going to do away with or invalidate S&OP, Six Sigma, or just eat up our ERP. Maybe the ERP of the future is different, but doesn't mean it goes away. But I'd be curious your take on this.
So actually, before we started recording, we were talking about houses. We were talking about some personal stuff. And that house I grew up in a long, long time ago in a land far, far away. If it was being built today, the person who built the roof would not build the roof first before they knocked down the trees, before they cut down the trees, dug the hole, poured the foundation, built the foundation, yada, yada, yada. That old hammer I was telling you about, with the electric take on it, it would still be used, but for the most part, they'd be using a nail gun. The screwdriver that I still have that built that house, it's a nut driver now. It's a power tool, but it still does the same thing, and it's still a hammer. It's still a screwdriver. Same thing with ERP and S&OP. People joke I'm an old tool, but I think I can still be useful sometimes here and there. It's the same thing with S&OP. Today, S&OP has to evolve, and it is evolving. We're trying to evolve it. It has to be not just the old system of record, not the data system, but a system of action. It has to span across the entire ecosystem and include everybody. And sales and operations planning, it's an older term, but it still has value. The unfortunate thing is people treat S&OP as a thing. It's not a thing. S&OP has to be a mindset. When you hear about, hey, do you guys do S&OP? Oh, yeah, we have a meeting every third Friday of the month. Well, technically speaking, Santosh, aren't you and I in a meeting now? We are, right? Are we doing S&OP? No, we're talking about it, but we're not doing it. So S&OP is a mindset. It's how you run your business. And so with all the fancy terms, SI&OP, which brings in inventory, financial FS&OP, which brings in the finance. Well, you shouldn't have to change the name, because if you're doing the process of S&OP correctly, you're already bringing in inventory issues. You're expanding it to your partners. You're bringing your customers. You're bringing your suppliers. You're doing that. And in today's world, I'm going to break my own rule. I'm saying that word again. With the disruptions we have, you're not really looking at it at different levels or horizons now. The S&OP that typically looked out 1 to 2, 3 years now has to be combined with the sales and operations execution. You have to merge them together. Now, this is where the AI piece comes back in, because it now, smart sensors on the nail gun. It tells you how much torque to put in. It tells you how much torque to put in on that screw, so you don't strip the screw, because if you strip the screw, that takes time to fix it. Same thing with the different machinery and the different things. AI can help with your forecasting, with your customer preferences changing. It can help predict when they're going to want new products. It's going to help you rationalize SKUs, which in the food and beverage industry is one of the most costly things out there. It's going to be able to tell you which SKUs are profitable. It's going to help you manage cannibalization. It's like you buy a box of Cheerios, out there, but now you add the different flavors. Well, do you just sell more or do you just take less of the base? AI can help with all that stuff. So the tools may have changed shape, but it still matches the process and they're still useful, but modern technology can help make them better. And with the input of AI and those type of technology, that helps you again just be more productive with the same stuff. But certain things, you just they're not going to go away.
Love that. Last question here before we kind of move into wrap up. You clearly bring deep subject matter knowledge in and around manufacturing as a function. You're being a manufacturing operator. You now also work with clients to help them understand how to capture the value of technology as they operate their businesses. And so the question I have in mind has to do with change. Change is hard. We're not predisposed to handling change very well. On occasion, you'll find kind of the odd person, so to speak, who actually can deal with change quite thoughtfully and kind of move with stride. But what perspective or lessons learned would you share with those undergoing change, especially as they're implementing various digital tools, trying to get buy-in from various organizations within their company, but also, have the trust and buy-in of folks to use it and adopt it? Anything that you've learned that others might also draw from?
Yeah, I've learned a lot. And one of the things, when you asked me that, first or second question about what's the story of Steve, and thank God I didn't put you to sleep. That first job, that set the foundation for me. Because as a production scheduler, and then if you look at the bigger picture across multiple plants, production planning, I like to use sports analogies. Some people don't, but the production scheduler is like that catcher in baseball. The catcher in baseball is a unique position. It's the only position where you can see, they're the only position on the field that can see the whole field. So needless to say, I was a catcher before I was a production scheduler, go figure. But that perspective allowed me, when I got that software job, when I was helping people implement the finite scheduling tool, I knew the scheduler's role. I knew what they went through. I joke with people from time to time. People kind of raise their eyebrow, but yeah, part of my career, I actually did have a real job. And I still, when we pull into Walmart, my wife looks at me. She goes, "Are you okay?" Because she sees I get the shakes because I still have PTSD. Because when you're dealing in a production environment and you have to deliver to these big retailers, the pressure's on, man. It's tough because a missed order to a big retailer like that can hurt your reputation. It can cancel orders. It can really change the dynamics of your organization just by that one order. So you may sit there and say, I'm just going to shop. I'm just going to, short the mom and pop guy. Well, you can't do that either because that small little order from the mom and pop guy, that's their livelihood. And they're counting on you to deliver that product to get there. So one of the things that I've learned is you need to look at both sides of the coin. Who are you serving? And each role in an organization has conflicting objectives, and it all starts with communication. And the digital transformation helps people with that communication. You know what the left hand's doing. You know what the right hand's doing. And you have to have communication up and downstream. And that's why I keep, we mentioned connected workforce a couple times. That connected workforce solution, it brings that critical piece of the shop floor into the whole mix, which they weren't included, because now you get that feedback. You get the feedback from the trenches. Hey, you had a great, you only got 800 cases today. You're supposed to get 1,000. No, I can only make it 800. I don't know who told you I can make 1,000. I can only make 800. Well, by getting that fixed, all your data now, all the way up through forecasting, is now changed because you now can adjust those production plans and those schedules. So what you need, my advice to people is you need to know the flip side of the job you're doing, because if you know how it affects the other things, it's like your podcast. I've seen you host these, but I've watched some of the podcasts that you've been on. And I bet you've learned some things on both sides of the coin that you didn't realize until you were on the other side. It's the same thing with manufacturing and all the way through, business. You got to see how it's going to affect everybody in line. And that's where technology can really help you as an additional tool to help streamline the processes. But again, it's three things: people, processes, and systems. They have to be intertwined. They have to be connected.
Love that. Well, Stephen, we're about to enter the part of the episode that I call rapid fire. It's a fun way to wrap up. I'm going to give you 3 statements, and I want you just to kind of respond what comes top of mind in roughly 20 seconds per statement.
Got it.
You ready to go?
Ready. Fire away.
Where's there a harder challenge, on the manufacturing side of the house or the technology side of the house?
Manufacturing. And I'll tell you why, because you can't debug a broken forklift. You got to go get a part. Sometimes they're delayed. You can't get it. Real world constraints don't take coffee breaks. Sometimes with adding technology, you have the flexibility to try different things. And manufacturing, you got to fix something on the fly, or an order gets missed, and that can cause you a problem.
Which part of the industry that you spend time with is most agile? Our food and beverage friends or their CPG counterparts?
This could be a trick question, because technically speaking, it's both, because they both use the same value chain, and the processes are very similar. The only difference is on one side of the fence, if the cold chain breaks, things melt, things go bad. But essentially the processes are the same. So, consumer product and food and beverage, are pretty much the same thing, give or take. Although one you can eat and one you can't, unless you're a toddler or a golden retriever. So,
and my golden retrievers, I actually have one right behind me.
Probably enjoying a nice sock right now, right?
You know what? I think there's some thunder in the distance, so he's cowering behind me is really what he's doing.
Wonderful.
But to bring us home here, what are you most proud of? Fixing a broken process or changing someone's mindset?
I think changing a mindset, because a process can't dig its heels in. A process can't say, hey, we've always done it this way. In fact, to be honest with you, sometimes fixing a broken process can help change somebody's mindset. So definitely changing somebody's mindset.
This is awesome. With that, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us, sharing some of your wisdom around manufacturing technology. And we will sure to tune in as you tease some of those new things that are in the pipe for you and the team at QAD. Certainly we'll be joining in, and curious to see what you're about to unfold.
Yeah, by all means, if anybody has anything for me, QAD website, LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, send me a message, but be happy to share some of these experiences, and hopefully people can, get some insight out of them.
Awesome. Cheers.
Thanks for watching. Follow us at dynamo.vc for all the latest episodes. We'll see you next time.